Good morning, students. Welcome to the IGCSE online sessions. I'm Mr. Charles, and this is the first lesson of week 7. Please go to your coursebook, page 177, on Yeti Tracks, an extract by Bruce Chatwin. Let's read together this beautiful story. It is divided into many extracts from A all the way to H, and they each tell the progressive story of Bruce Chatwin searching for the Yeti monster. Extract A. After crossing the torrent of Bote Jose, the track then zigzagged up a cliff, and we had our first view of Everest to the east. Streams of snow were blowing off the summit. On ahead was Kombo Yala, the sacred mountain of the Sherpas, rearing its triangular peak above a throne of puffy white clouds. Extract B. All along the track to Tome, there were clumps of blue iris and gentians the size of sapphire studs. Soon we came to a lovely wood of birch trees, leafless as yet, with peeling orange bark and beards of jade green lichen festooned from their branches. We passed through stands of pale pink rhododendrons, kind of flowers or kind of trees actually, and as we ambled along, I asked Sanji Dorji whether he believed in the Yeti. I do, he said, and went on to explain how there were two kinds of the Yeti. The Mete, which killed people, and the Dzute, which killed only animals. But Yeti, he added somberly, is also some kind of god. He promised that when we got to his own village, Chumming, he would introduce me to a woman who was actually attacked by the beast. Usually, he said, a person who looked into the Yeti's eyes was doomed to die. But she has been the exception. Extract C. Later, in the village of the Tome, which means way up, we ran in with some novice monks coming back from the market. They were all singing at the tops of their voices. The smallest was walloping out the rhythm on an oil can, and a wizened old monk followed, wearing purple rags and a suester kind of hat, waterproof hat. Ask him, I said to Sanjay, whether he has seen the Yeti. Not I, the old man smiled, but my aunts did. His two aunts had been pasturing their sheep when the whole flock suddenly poured off the mountain, with the Yeti in pursuit. How did it look? I asked. Bigger than a man, said the monk, with terrible yellow-blue eyes, arms almost touching the ground, red hair growing upwards from the waist, and a white crest on top. Extract D. We walked until mid-afternoon and had reached the outskirts of Komjong when Sanji called out, Bruce, you remember about that Yeti lady? There she is. We shinned over the wall and greeted Lakpa Doma, a handsome woman in her 30s with polished red cheeks and a dazzling smile. She wore heavy gold earrings, a striped Sherpa woman's apron, and was mattocking her field while her old mother cut potato slips for planting. This was Sanchi's version of her story. One day in 1974, she was tending her family's yaks in a summer pasture near Mekchermo, when the Yeti sprung on her from behind a rock, dragged her to the stream, but then dumped her and went on to slaughter 3 of the yaks simply by twisting their horns. The beast had the same yellow eyes, big brown ridges, and hollow temples. Some policemen came up from Namche to examine the yak carcasses and stated categorically that the killer had never been a man. I suppose it was a Dzute, I said. It was, said Sanji Dorje. Extract E. I don't know, I said to Sanji. Not sure what to say, for what indeed could one say? What did I or any other Westerner really know about the Yeti? 2 rhetorical questions here. I knew, for example, that Yetis or similar species had been knocking about European literature since the elder Pliny. Natural History 7, number 9, described a race of a wild man who lived in the mountains of Emiaus, the western Himalaya, moved with astonishing speed, and had huge feet turned back to front. I knew that the Sherpas too believed that Yeti had his feet turned back. I knew that several tough-minded mountaineers, such as Eric Chipton and or Sir John Hunt, had not only photographed Yeti footprints in the snow, but had heard the Yeti shrieking. I also knew that Hillary's scientific expedition had failed to find the least trace of the creature, and had suggested that the tracks were those of the snow leopard or Tibetan blue bear, enlarged by the melting sun. Extract F. Of course, I reflected, it was just conceivable that some giant or otang-like ape had survived in the high Himalaya. But I, for one, was skeptical. I believed rather that the Yeti was, for want of a better term, a creature of the collective unconscious. Man, after all, is the inventor of his own monsters. Babies see monsters long before they are shown them in picture books. And only a few weeks earlier, I had watched, in a school near Alice Springs, some Aboriginal children drawing an ape-like ogre from their mythology, in a continent that never saw an ape until the coming of the whites. The point is, we imagine monsters before we learn about monsters. We draw pictures of monsters based on talks before we get to learn the actual stories and actual searches for these monsters. I believed, too, that the people most likely to see Yetis were either simpletons or schizophrenics, religious Aztecs, or the very poor, both liable to protein deficiency, or those at high altitude with a diminished supply of oxygen to the brain. Perhaps Yeti was a mountain hallucination. Extract G. We then climbed up alongside the Gozompa glacier and came out into a blinding bright landscape of snow and naked rock and green lakes half frozen over. On a patch of open water, a ruddy sheldrake was nibbling at some weed. Elizabeth was watching him through her binoculars when I happened to turn round and blinked. "Look," I blurted out. "Yeti tracks." "Oh yeah?" drawled Elizabeth, and went on watching the sheldrake. Kind of duck. "Look at them." On the north-facing slope behind us, there was a line of very strange footprints. They were each about 15 inches long, wider at the toe than the heel, and on some you saw, or thought you saw, the imprint of a giant big toe. They approached the base of an almost vertical bank, stopped, continued on the slope higher, and finally petered out along a rocky ridge. I reckoned that the creature had jumped at least 8 foot into the air and 12 long. The tracks were perhaps a day old and had melted a little. Even so, I could see that they hadn't been made of any of the usual contenders: yak, blue bear, snow leopard, langur monkey, human, or a human hoaxer. No hoaxer could have jumped that high. Yet the Sherpas say that Yeti habitually jumps his own height and more. The strange thing was that its foot had scuffed the snow on the way up. Unless it really was a Yeti with the feet turned back, in which case the jumper had never or had been jumping down. I was sure there must be some logical explanation and called Sanji over. Did you ever, I asked, on any of your tasks, see anything like these? Never, he said darkly. They were not made by men. Then who made them? Same as Yeti. Extract H. I still have no idea what these Yeti tracks were. My whole life has been a search for the miraculous, yet at the first faint flavor of the uncanny, I tend to turn rational and scientific. After this excitement, the whole party was infected with Yeti fever and kept seeing things on every mountain. On Cho-Oyo, we thought we saw Reynold Messner maneuvering across an ice fall. He was on the mountain that day, but not where we could see him. And the thing we did see turned out to be a pinnacle of rock, doubling and tripling as our eyes watered in the wind. Some of the names mentioned in the text, before we go to the difficult vocabulary. Sanji Dorje is the author's Sherpa mountain guide. So from the area called Sherpa, there was a citizen, an inhabitant. His name was Sanji George. Matoking is a verb, and it means loosening the soil with an agricultural tool called a matok. So it's a kind of a tool to flip the soil upside down in order for it to breathe. The sheldrake is a water bird. Hillary is the which was a person that was on the mountains. This is Sir Edmund Hillary. He's born in New Zealand and he's an explorer who reached the summit of Mount Everest in 1953. Reynold Messner is an Italian mountaineer and explorer. So we have many people that attempted this summit and attempted to find the Yeti, accidentally or purposefully. Difficult vocabulary. A torrent in the river is the strong, fast stream. Clumps means lumps or masses. Festooned means decorated. Novice, the novice monks, means beginners. They are in the still low level, they are still noobs. Walloping means beating. Pasturing is the overseeing of livestock. When you oversee, when you see them, when you make sure that they eat and that they go through the field, this is bringing up the livestock, overseeing the livestock. A human hoaxer, this could not be, Chatwin said, this could not be any of the contenders, the uh, the people or the things or the animals that competed to be making these footprints. He found this footprint, definitely of a Yeti, and he said that this does not fit any of the other possibilities. That could be a blue bear, a yak, a snow leopard, a langur monkey, a human, or a human hoaxer. A human hoaxer is someone who intentionally does this footprint in order to deceive others that this is a Yeti. So even this deceiver's footprints do not match a Yeti's. Shind means to climb quickly. As we said, matalking is the procedure of flipping the soil. The carcasses are the corpses of the dead animals, in our case, the dead yaks. Aesthetics are abstainers, people who eat very little and socialize very little and devote their lives to God or to solely praying, meditating, just being with nature and themselves. Ruddy, it means rosy color. Sheldrake, the kind of animal that Elizabeth, the wife of Chatwin, was observing, is a kind of duck. Pettered, it means faded away. These are the pictures of some of the nouns mentioned in the text. From the bottom left, you have an iris flower, a little similar to the gentian flower. This is the suester that one monk, the wise monk, was wearing. This is the picture of the yak that 3 yaks were killed, that were overseen by that woman who was breeding the yaks, and then a yeti came, dragged her along to the stream, and then left her alone in order to go feast on the yaks. As you can see, they could never be killed by a man, especially that they were killed by twisting their horns only from their heads or their brains. This is definitely an incapability of a human. This is the rhododendrons. It's a very beautiful tree that grows in those areas. This is the Sherpas mountain, the home of the Yeti, and this is the Bote Jose River. That was the very fast and strong current. When that begins the story, when they finished this river, they moved to the Sherpas. Reading exercise, page 180. I want you to take 10 minutes for question 1 only. A all the way to F or to E if you still had time for less than 30 minutes. Try to solve these questions by referring back to the extracts. Pause the video and try to do that, and then come back and we'll do them together. For question 1, reread the extract A using your own words. Describe how Chatwin creates a sense of distance and grandeur. Grandeur or majesty in this paragraph. Well, he uses the names of places that are grandeur and adjectives suitable to this majestic state. Sorry, for example, torrent, strong and mighty, zigged up a cliff. It went up a cliff. This creates an image in your head of a vast, distant, majestic place. Streams of snow, a summit, a peak. All these words, a throne, definitely a very majestic word. All these words create images of distance and grandeur and spatial descriptions. For question B, reread the extract and identify 2 local beliefs regarding the Yeti. The first one, they believed that it is a type of God. And the second belief is that people who look into its eyes, they were doomed to die. And if you want, you can throw a third belief that there are 2 types of Yeti, the Mete and the Zute. Question C, in your own words, explain why the police in extract D stated that categorically, the killer of the axe could not have been a man. As we said, their horns, they are too big for a man to kill with his bare hands. So nobody could just twist their horns and wow. D. Explain how and why Chatwin uses two rhetorical questions in extract E. Imagine that you are, let's read the answer first. The first paragraph of the extract contains two rhetorical questions, and they are used to indicate how Chatwin ridiculed the previous supposed findings of the Yeti. Imagine that you see someone playing football very nicely, very eloquently. This person is very proficient in playing football. So you might ask yourself, if you say, um, what can I say about this player? This is a rhetorical question. This is the first part of Chatwin. This is a rhetorical question because you can say a lot of things, but if you choose not to say anything and use a rhetorical question because you already know the answer, that nothing can be said because there are so many things to say. This is very great. This is so majestic that words escape your mouth. You cannot describe this. The other question, the rhetorical question that he says, what did I or any other Westerner really know about the Yeti? He's belittling, he's ridiculing the previous findings or the previous stories of Westerners about the Yeti, that it was only existed in children's books and in far observations of mountaineers, not real scholars and not real habitants or citizens of that area. Imagine the same footballer. You could actually ask yourself the rhetorical question, what could I really claim about, for example, knowing Kung Fu? Imagine you meet an Asian person that is proficient in Kung Fu and he sees you trying to move your legs and hands a little bit. So you would ask yourself in front of his grandeur presence, what can I claim, me or any other Middle Eastern guy, to know about Kung Fu? This is a rhetorical question because you do know about Kung Fu, but again, your knowledge is zero in his presence. That's why these are rhetorical. Question E. Describe what makes the Yeti tracks identifiable in the snow. Their size is very big, their shape is very distinctive, and the possibility that the foot is turned backwards. The toes are to the back and the heel is in the front. F. In your opinion, why does Chatwin include what his wife is doing in extract G? Explain your thoughts. As we said, his wife, or if you remember, his wife was looking through a binoculars kind of scope or glasses into the ducks. And when he tells her, look, the Yeti tracks, she says, oh, really? And she continues looking at the glass or looking through the glasses. This symbolizes the Western evident attitude towards the Yeti. They are indifferent. They don't believe it really exists or it doesn't matter because they live very far away. Chatwin uses his wife in juxtaposition that he is very excited, very much caring to this finding, while his wife clearly isn't. So the occupation and indifferent, careless reaction of Elizabeth and juxtaposed with Chatwin's excitement, how Westerners are careless and indifferent of Yeti's existence. So while he seems very excited and very much caring about about the footprints that he sees, that khalas the Yeti exists, his wife seems careless, and she rather watches a duck through glasses, which is a very regular event, mundane event in the face of or in comparison with the finding of a Yeti. That's why this is juxtaposition between two contrasting things as the caring and careless, the Westerns and Chatwin. Try to solve questions 2, 3, and 4 for tomorrow. because tomorrow's video will include these. Thank you very much for listening. We're done for today. Stay safe and keep up the good work.